Snowberries are easy to overlook. They're small, bright red, and scattered so generously across Skyrim's hillsides that most of us harvest them without a second thought. Snowberries are one of the most mechanically and thematically placed plants in the province. They are the only ingredient to resist all three elemental damage types at once: fire, frost, and shock. That gives them a broader protective profile than any other plant, fungus, or animal ingredient in the game. Skyrim is a province shaped by extremes: dragonfire overhead, deadly cold in the mountains, and violent storms sweeping across the tundra. Growing at the very edge of the snowline is a plant hardy enough to withstand it all. Welcome to Foraging Fauna and Flora, where we wade through the wilderness of Tamriel, unearthing deep-rooted secrets and uncovering mysteries from the majestic mountaintops to the mystical meadows. In this episode of Foraging Fauna and Flora, we'll study snowberries, considering where they grow, why they prosper in harsh climates, and how their alchemical profile reflects the environmental pressures of the province. From there, we'll trace their role across the base game and DLC, their uses in cooking and survival, and what they divulge about the way Skyrim ties plant life to climate, preservation, and the harsh reality of survival. Snowberries are bright red fruits borne on hardy shrubs scattered throughout Skyrim's colder and more elevated regions. Some berries are dusted with snow, while others remain uncovered. They appear most often in snowy landscapes, especially near the snowline, where mountain conditions begin to overtake the more temperate rhythms of the lower province. Snowberry bushes frequently occupy the snowline itself. In this zone, soils are thin and frequently disturbed, and winter exposure is intense but not permanent. Since the province sits so far north, snowline and treeline pressures would begin at lower elevations than they do in warmer mountain regions. Snowberries therefore make especially good use of exposed ridges, upper valleys, lee slopes, and broken margins below the treeline, where conditions are too severe for consistent forest cover, but not so severe that a low woody perennial cannot persist. In Skyrim, this snowline is most clearly visible across the Pale, Winterhold, Falkreath's high ridges, and the northern tundra margins. Lore describes Winterhold as a snow-blown and inhospitable northeastern landscape. The Pale is explicitly snow-covered, and Falkreath's mountains rise into a starkly colder band above its lower forests. Geologically, those are the kinds of places where one would expect glacial and periglacial processes to dominate. If we assume Skyrim follows real-world weather patterns, then freeze-thaw weathering would constantly fracture rock, cryoturbation would churn mineral soil upward, and solifluction would slowly pull thawed surface layers downslope. Together, these processes would produce shallow, unstable, and patchy ground rather than deep, continuous topsoil, favoring hardy shrubs over soft annuals or richer meadow flora. Nowhere is this better illustrated than in southern Falkreath near the Cyrodiil border, where the mountainous terrain supports unusually tall and robust bushes. In these harsher border elevations, snowberries reach exceptional size, almost doubling their height. Geologically, snowberries favor disturbed terrain, the edges of ruins, roads, barrows. These are places where soil has been broken, mixed, compacted, or thinly re-established, allowing hardy shrubs to colonize where slower growing plants cannot. Real glacial till is typically unsorted sediment deposited directly by ice. While outwash plains are reworked by meltwater and sorted by size, this leaves coarser material near the glacier and finer material farther away. That kind of terrain produces abrupt changes in drainage, texture, and nutrient retention across very short distances. A useful real-world comparison for Skyrim snowberries is the genus Symphoricarpos, a group of deciduous shrubs in the honeysuckle family known for their clustered berries and remarkably resilient growth habits. Real snowberries tolerate a wide range of soils, including sandy, loamy, rocky, and clay-heavy ground. They are equally at home on hillsides, woodland margins, stream banks, and other unstable or transitional environments. Many species also spread through rhizomes, allowing them to form persistent colonies rather than existing as isolated, delicate shrubs. This pattern of growth makes the genus especially useful as a comparison for Skyrim's snowberries. A plant with this type of tolerance would be well suited to the province's post-glacial terrain, where soils are often shallow, rocky, and unevenly drained. Like Symphoricarpos, snowberries appear to be tough, colony-forming shrubs suited to poor soils and seasonal stress. They are more tightly bound to snowy uplands and exposed mountain ecologies, and their vivid red fruit seems visually calibrated to a province of ice, stone, and harsh light. Most importantly, where real snowberries rely on bitterness, toxicity, and endurance to survive difficult ground, Skyrim's snowberries transmute those same qualities into alchemical utility. It is important to note that visually, snowberries appear to be modeled after the real-world holly tree, but in nearly every functional aspect, they align more closely with an actual snowberry shrub. Up to this point, everything we have discussed can be explained through climate, geology, and plant physiology. Cold-adapted shrubs exist in real ecosystems, and their placement along the snowline in Skyrim is environmentally consistent. However, this explanation is still incomplete because Skyrim does not exist within the confines of our grounded reality. The Elder Scrolls universe operates under the assumption that magicka is an ambient environmental force, much like radiation, pressure, or temperature. It permeates the landscape, accumulates in certain regions, and interacts with living organisms over time. Plants growing in high-stress zones are therefore exposed to not only cold, wind, and ultraviolet radiation, but also to sustained magical exposure. Snowberries should be understood within that context. Rather than being damaged by fire, frost, or shock, snowberries absorb and stabilize those energies. This parallels how real plants store productive compounds in response to stress. In magical terms, it implies long-term saturation from exposure. From an alchemical perspective, snowberries are one of the most deceptively important plants in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. They are common, highly visible, and widely distributed across the province, yet their alchemical profile is unlike any other ingredient in the game. Snowberries are the only alchemical ingredient in Skyrim whose effects are entirely positive. They possess no harmful or neutral traits. In addition to this, snowberries are also the only ingredient in Skyrim that provides resistance to all three elemental damage types simultaneously: fire, frost, and shock. Once we understand why snowberries are so unusual on their own, the next step is to look at how they behave in combination with other ingredients. In total, snowberries can be combined with 42 different ingredients across Skyrim. These combinations span plants, animal materials, salts, and magically altered substances, reflecting how broadly snowberries interact with environmental stress and elemental forces. Let us now break down which ingredients snowberries combine with, organized by effect and by base game or DLC. To produce a potion that resists fire using snowberries, base game pairings include bone meal, dragon's tongue, elf's ear, fire salts, fly amanita, and mudcrab chitin. Dragonborn content expands these options, introducing ash creep cluster, ashen grass pod, and spawn ash. Creation Club content further broadens the list, adding fire petal, gnarl bark, and slowed soap. To produce a potion that resists frost using snowberries, base game pairings include frost miriam, frost salts, hawkbeak, moon sugar, purple mountain flower, silverside perch, slaughterfish scales, small pearl, and thistle branch. Creation Club content adds Daedroth teeth, flamestalk, Hydnum azure giant spore, redwort flower, and steel blue entaloma. To produce a potion that resists shock using snowberries, base game pairings include blue dartwing, glow dust, glowing mushroom, pearl, pine thrush egg, and swamp fungal pod. Dragonborn content introduces ash hopper jelly, and Creation Club content adds cork bulb root and Kagudi hide. To produce a potion that fortifies enchanting using snowberries, base game pairings include Blue Butterfly Wing, Hagraven Claw, and Spriggan Sap. Dragonborn content adds Spawn Ash. Dawnguard content further extends these combinations with Ancestor Mothwing and Char's Hunter Antennae. Creation Club content completes the list with Droog Wax and Stoneflower Petals. Snowberries also support a small number of dual effect combinations. To gain both frost and shock resistance at once, snowberries can be paired with Hawkbeak from the base game. To gain both fire resistance and fortify enchanting, snowberries can be paired with Spawn Ash from the Dragonborn DLC. Pre-harvested snowberry samples are widely available throughout Skyrim. 142 guaranteed samples can be found in 66 different locations. The largest concentrations of snowberry samples appear in Yingville Barrow, where 15 can be collected, and in the Solitude Catacombs, which contain 12. Smaller but still reliable quantities can be found in Broken Tower Redoubt, Ares House, the Bard's College, and Brandymug Farm. Snowberries are classified as a common ingredient, meaning all apothecary merchants have a 36% chance of carrying between 1 and 5 samples at any given time. They can also be randomly found in barrels and apothecary satchels throughout the world. Across Skyrim's overworld, snowberry bushes are found in hundreds of locations, forming one of the most extensive shrub distributions in the game. Skyrim contains 1,578 snowberry bushes spread across 208 different locations. The densest growth appears around Bloodlit Throne and Falkreath Hold, Windward Ruins in the Pale, and Driftshade Refuge near Winterhold. Other notable concentrations can be found near Greywater Grotto, Waynon Stones, Morthal, Trader's Post, Haymar's Shame, Nightgate Inn, and the Pale Imperial Camp. These sites share several defining characteristics: exposed terrain, proximity to ancient Nordic ruins, and long-term human or military disturbance. Snowberries do not primarily occupy fertile agricultural zones such as Whiterun's Central Tundra farms or the Rift's lowland river valleys. So by this point, snowberries are already doing a great deal of work. They make sense ecologically, they make sense alchemically, and they make sense as one of the most dependable protective ingredients in the province. But that still leaves a more ordinary question: what happens after you pick them? Most people in Skyrim are not master alchemists. They are farmers, travelers, innkeeps, and households making use of what grows around them. Snowberries are gathered from ruins and roadsides, then carried into baskets, satchels, pantries, and kitchens. One of the clearest ways to see that shift is through survival mode, which offers an optional, more materially grounded way to experience Skyrim by turning environmental hardship into an active gameplay system. First released through the Creation Club in 2017, and later incorporated into Skyrim Special Edition with the 10th anniversary update in 2021, it allows players to adopt a harsher rule set in which hunger, fatigue, and cold exposure become persistent mechanical pressures. Travel, recovery, and physical performance are all affected. Food is no longer something casually hoarded in chests, and the landscape is no longer crossed without consequence. Long journeys require planning, rest matters, and hostile weather can weaken the player before combat even begins. In that system, survival depends not only on weapons, armor, or spells, but on preparation, shelter, and the ability to sustain the body itself. Snowberries appear in 2 baked foods added with the Hearthfire DLC, the Snowberry Crostata and the Lavender Dumpling. The Snowberry Crostata, made from snowberries, flour, and butter, restores health and grants a minor resistance to fire. The Lavender Dumpling, made from moon sugar, flour, snowberries, and lavender, restores health while fortifying magicka and granting resistance to magic. One of the few in-universe texts to address snowberries directly is Nord Cuisine, Sweets Edition, which describes them to be so tart they're unpalatable. That detail is important because it places snowberries outside the category of foods eaten casually at the moment of harvest. Their value depends on collection, storage, and later transformation through cooking or baking. In Skyrim's broader food ecology, this gives them a more specialized role than most native plants, which tend to function either as direct consumables or as alchemical ingredients with immediate use. In this sense, snowberries resemble the preservation-oriented berries of real cold climate food systems, such as lingonberries, cranberries, and cloudberries, which are often too sharp to eat raw in large quantities, but become more valuable once cooked, sweetened, or otherwise processed. Snowberries appear most naturally in connection with winter observances, particularly those associated with New Life Festival traditions. They are among the few fruits locally available within Skyrim's climate that could plausibly occupy a place on winter tables without reliance on long-distance trade. Snowberries also appear outside the sphere of food, and the clearest example is material rather than literary. In the Elder Scrolls Online, snowberry lip paint is described as a stain for the lips made from the juices of snowberries, which shows that the berry's red pigment had a recognized cosmetic use in addition to its culinary and alchemical value. Although we only see this example clearly in the Elder Scrolls Online, it shows that snowberries were not only brewed or blanched, but processed into practical dyes and cosmetic resources. In a northern culture where vivid plant color would be seasonally limited, the same berry that can store well will remain available in cold conditions and provide a durable source of red pigmentation. Another piece of evidence of snowberries being used as pigment appears in Freylit and Pular, a love song. In ESO, a copy can be found in Parasite's Cave in Blackreach, Greymoor Caverns, beside a pair of embracing corpses, a placement that gives the literature an additional tragic layer. The song concerns two lovers, Freylit and Pular. Freylit is described as having a mouth as red as snowberries. Although this description doesn't confirm whether her lips are tinted naturally or with makeup, it assumes the audience already understands snowberries as a familiar visual reference, vividly red, seasonably recognizable, and culturally legible enough to anchor an image of beauty and desire. Together, these references place snowberries in two complementary roles, as a practical pigment in everyday cosmetic use, and as a poetic image of color, beauty, and vitality. In both cases, they appear as culturally familiar materials whose significance extends beyond food or alchemy into the seasonal and visible life of the body. Although brief, snowberries do make an appearance in the Elder Scrolls Blades, where they function simply as a food item rather than an alchemical ingredient, restoring a small portion of the player's health when consumed. So in the end, snowberries turn out to be far more than a common red berry growing along Skyrim's frozen roads. They carry the marks of a province that produced them: cold, hardship, exposure, and endurance. They protect against the very elemental dangers that define the landscape. This plant is tied not only to survival, but to the habits, knowledge, and material culture of those who know how to live in constant winter. And that, I think, is what makes snowberries worth stopping for. They remind us that Skyrim's ingredients are not exclusively mechanical objects scattered across the map to be harvested, sorted, and turned into potions. Some of them are built with a deeper internal logic, where ecology, climate, daily life, and symbolism all converge in the same plant. Snowberries are one of the clearest examples of this. They belong to the cold visually, geographically, and mechanically, but they also belong to kitchens, festivals, cosmetics, and song. They are woven into the world in a way that makes them feel lived with, not merely looked at. And once you start noticing that, it changes the way you look at the rest of Skyrim's landscape. Fauna, flora, fungi, and gathered materials. All of these can tell us something about how the province feeds itself, protects itself, and adorns itself. Snowberries are one example, but they are certainly not the last. The closer we look, the more we find that many of Skyrim's most ordinary ingredients carry meanings that stretch far beyond the alchemy menu. There is always more hidden in this landscape than first appears, and snowberries are a good reminder that even the smallest ingredient can tell a much larger story. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear from you. What's your most memorable encounter with snowberries in Skyrim? Was it the first time you realized just how useful they were in alchemy? Finding them scattered across some frozen roadside or ancient ruin? Or maybe finally seeing them as more than just another red berry to harvest and forget? Share your thoughts down in the comments below, and tell me this too. When you see a snowberry bush in the wild, do you always pick it, or do you sometimes leave it there just as part of the landscape? If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to stay updated on all things Elder Scrolls. A special shout out to the Black Reach Botanical Society scholars, my channel members. Joining is never expected, but always appreciated. Join us next time on Foraging Fauna and Flora for another adventure into the wilds of Tamriel. Until then, may your travels be safe and your groundbreaking discoveries many. Farewell, fellow adventurers.